And welcome back to CentralCoastRadio.com. Well, we know a lot of you out there love music, and we know that one of the people who is really, really linked to the Australian music scene is none other than Michael Gudinski. And there's a brand new film coming out about Michael Gudinski's life called Ego, the Michael Gudinski Story. And it's been put together by director Paul Goldman. So we've actually got Paul on the phone today to chat a little bit about this amazing documentary. Welcome to the program, Paul.
Pleasure to be here.
So, Paul, tell us a little bit about this documentary. What made you decide to make a movie about Michael Gudinski's life?
Michael came to me in 2019. So I go back a long way with Michael. I've made a lot of music videos for him. And I was also involved in a documentary about Ben Cousins that Michael executive produced, which went to air quite a few years ago, a very controversial document about Ben Cousins, the AFL footballer. So Michael and I go way back, and Michael had come to me and proposed that with the 50th anniversary of Mushroom coming up, that it was time to make a documentary or a documentary series about his mushroom empire. And I ummed and ahed about it and decided that it was a good idea as long as I could anchor it by doing extensive interviews with him. We began work on that. We thought it might be a 3 or 4 part documentary series. Then COVID hit, and living in Melbourne, that meant I couldn't do anything. And then when COVID, when all the lockdowns ended, we were gearing up to do some extensive interviews with Michael. We had spent the time over COVID writing scripts and getting ready, doing research, accessing archive, all things we could do from home. And then Michael very, very sadly and tragically and most unexpectedly passed away. And so we put the project away for a few months and then decided that we would make a documentary portrait about Michael himself and his story.
Was it difficult for you to make that decision after Michael passed away? Like you said, it was a tragic time. Was it difficult for you to make that decision to keep going, or did you feel that it was the right way to pay tribute to his life?
I think it was both things, Dave. I think we all felt it was a very, very heavy loss and as I said, very unexpected. So blindsided us. I'd always thought that I was going to do a lot of interviews with Michael. Michael was very keen to have the final say, and Michael's a great subject to interview, so I was looking forward to that. I knew it would be provocative and he would say controversial things, and it would be a lot of fun. And when he passed away, it felt like, for a moment, we all felt bereft about what to do and how to go about it. And there was a lot more people than myself involved, of course. We had to then talk to the family, his wife, Sue Gudinski, and his children. Matt was due to take over the company straight away. And so there was a lot of discussions about what it would now become. And as I said, we hit upon the idea that it should be a documentary portrait of Michael and his story.
Now, I want to go right back here, because working in radio and television as long as I have, I've had times when I've met Michael over the years, and I remember the first time I met him, I was a teenager still at uni, and I was absolutely terrified when I first met him, but he was such a nice guy. What was that first time like for you when you met Michael and got to work with him?
I was nervous. I was a young kid at film school, and I met Michael because I just made a music video for Nick Cave's first band, The Boys Next Door. It was something I'd done at film school, and Michael had heard that I had done it and asked to see it, so I brought it to his office with the producer, who was also at film school with me. And we showed it to Michael, and he said, "I want that." And we said, "Well, you can't own it because it's actually owned. The intellectual property rights are owned by the college." And Michael said, I don't care, I want it, and I'll pay you to finish it properly, and we'll put it to air in the next couple of weeks, which we did. And I was scared, but my producer, who was with me, she turned around and told him to go get lost. So I was scared. I mean, I enjoyed Michael. I've done a lot of work with Michael. I've always found him to be. I mean, people talk about Michael being a force of nature. Michael was also a life force as well. He was a great motivator and creator, and so he was loud. He was brash. I think it's fair to say, in some sense, he was a larrikin. He was certainly a maverick. He beat his own path to fame and fortune, and he was a great entrepreneur, but he was also a music man. So right up until the end, I found it could be very unnerving being around Michael. There's just such enormous amounts of energy pouring off him, as you know.
Yeah.
And he had the attention span of a gnat. So, while you're actually having a meeting with Michael, it was common for him to be on the phone, taking phone calls while he's talking to you, and seemingly could actually hold about 3 conversations going on at the same time, which I can't do, and I found very frustrating.
So when you first started working on the documentary, knowing Michael so well, did you find that an advantage or a disadvantage when you first started working on this film?
I was very reluctant originally to make the film, because I always think there's probably a conflict of interest there. But I'd also had many, many run-ins with Michael, and our relationship had been quite fractious at times. We'd actually gone to court a couple of times. But Michael actually came to me, and my very first reaction when he rang me up and asked me whether I was interested, I said no, and then we talked about it, and I realised that I was going to have a thoroughly crazy good time doing it, and I do mean crazy. So I came on board. And then, of course, when Michael died, I just felt like I owed him enormously. And it was kind of a badge of honour, and something I felt like I really had to do.
Definitely. And what was it like talking to all of those musicians that we see in this documentary? There are so many musicians that were touched by Michael's life, and they're all in this documentary. What was it like working with them and sitting down to interview them?
Well, exhilarating. I mean, nerve-wracking as well, because as people will see, there's some of the biggest names in music in the world in the documentary. I mean, I think it's a mark of respect that no one we approached said no. I mean, if we'd had more time, we could have interviewed so many more people. Everyone that we went to was very, very keen to pay tribute and tell some crazy stories about Michael, and as you know, they're in the documentary. They're the ones. Yep. Many of those stories are told. Michael was enormously esteemed and respected overseas. In Australia, he changed the industry here. Everywhere we went, people were very, very keen to come on board and tell the story. I mean, we were spoiled for choice, and we could have made the documentary twice as long.
I always find when you're working on a documentary, you learn so much. What did you learn about Michael when you were working on this documentary?
I think one of the things I learned about Michael that I wasn't so aware of was that the other side to that big, brash, loud character, that man who could walk into a room and just through his sheer energy levels and presence would dominate the room, was the other side of him, was this quiet guy who could be full of self-doubt.
Definitely.
And so I think that's unusual. I think we generally understand that people are very, very complex. But I guess it's very easy to lose sight regarding that with someone like Michael, because he presents as so loud and so full of confidence and so brash. But the other side to that person is someone who's very, very sensitive. And I think a couple of people in the documentary talk about him being shy.
Yeah. I thought when I was watching this documentary that I would be in tears a lot of the time, but I found it really inspirational as well. Was that something that you really wanted to put into this film so that it would inspire others who watched it as well?
I think so. I think we had a long discussion. We had a couple of people in an early cut at the end of the documentary say that there'll never be another Michael Gudinski. And we discussed it amongst ourselves. We thought that was really the wrong note to end on, because really Michael was a great, great motivator. And we'd all like to think that there'll never be another Michael Gudinski, but there'll be other people like Michael. And we thought the film needed to be inspirational in that way. We thought that it needed to be open-ended and not to close out the film by saying, well, they broke the mould when they made Michael, and there'll never be another one like him. There certainly won't be another Michael Gudinski, but there'll be there's another generation of young entrepreneurs coming through. The industry is changing all the time. I think Michael's story is inspirational in every conceivable way.
Definitely. Now, Paul, we are running out of time very, very quickly. So to finish off, what would you like to say to people who are about to head out into cinemas and watch this amazing film?
I think it's a great celebration of Australian music. I think you're going to hear the most incredible array of superstars, both Australian and overseas. Everyone from Dave Grohl to Bruce Springsteen to Kylie Minogue to Jimmy Barnes. I mean, Jimmy and Michael were very, very close. So I think Jimmy's insights are quite incredible. Jimmy talking about his own relationship with Michael, which was almost like brothers. But what really it is wall to wall a celebration of Australian music, which is very loud. It's this great roller coaster ride through one man's life that was game changing. I mean, he revolutionised Australian music forever.
Well, Paul, he certainly did. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today, and thank you so much for making such an important film as well.
Great pleasure. Nice talking to you, Dave. Thank you.